Now, before we start this video with myself, Ben Jacobs and Kate Mason, I want you guys to make sure you watch yesterday's episode of Vibe with Five. It was fun. It was incredible. Myself, Rio and Steve, we got at each other. Take a look at this.
I want him to do well. Every Man United manager comes in, I'm a fan. I want him to do well. So I wish him the best. He looks like a really focused and intense guy. I see him standing there watching the guys warm up and stuff. And he's a man, he seems of detail, but also he seems like a disciplinarian. He's there to make sure people are doing things right.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's Joel Beya, and I am back here on Five Reacts. I've got here Ben Jacobs and Kate Mason joining me today. How are you guys doing? You okay?
Hey, so good to see you.
Good to see you both.
Good. Still alive with only a few days of the window remaining.
Listen, man, but there's already action going on. Mr. Scott Parker loses his job at Bournemouth. I cannot believe this. Ben, I'll start with you. Did you see this coming with your inside information? Because surely it seems unfair. They've spent the least. What's going on?
Well, I don't think this has got too much to do with results, because he won the opening game, and then the three losses, even though they were huge, were obviously against quality opposition in Manchester City, Arsenal, and then Liverpool. And after the 9-0 defeat to Liverpool, Scott Parker looked very resigned. He looked like a bit of a broken manager. He said that his side were, quote, ill-equipped to effectively compete in the Premier League, not just against a team like Liverpool. And then he added that it was one of the most painful, if not the most painful, loss of his career. So in the context of that, talks then took place between the Bournemouth hierarchy and Scott Parker, and escalated by the fact that there's a limited time left in the window. And Parker made it clear that the club would have to spend more and bodies were needed. And Bournemouth made it clear that their approach this season is to be a sustainable football club, because they appreciate that odds-wise, if you like, they stand a very good chance of going down. And therefore, if you overspend and try and turn yourself too fast in terms of the volume of what you actually spend and the players that you bring in, and I suppose Nottingham Forest have done this to some extent, if it fails, and then you end up in the Championship again, especially off the back of a pandemic, you perhaps reach a scenario where by going up, you're more damaged when you go down. So there's a strategic difference, therefore, between Bournemouth and Scott Parker. And although it will be billed as a sacking, and in light of a heavy 9-0 loss to Liverpool, it's actually also down to the fact that there is a disagreement about the strategy of the football club between Parker and Bournemouth's board. And that is ultimately why he's departed.
Now, let's be honest, Kate, even though he's got sacked and, you know, everyone thinks it's unfair at the moment, do you reckon he would have eventually gone anyway?
My understanding is that he was unhappy with the level of spending, i.e. pretty much nil, as Ben points out, before the start of the season. So I don't feel as though this was an outcome that actually will have disappointed Scott Parker all that much, based on the wicked whispers that I'm hearing. The deal with the way he reacted after the 9-0, you know, saying that there's going to be plenty more of these, or words to that effect. He was effectively saying, he's almost effectively calling out the board at Bournemouth, and that's the reason why the whole thing fell apart, right? He can't be going around saying in public that his boss effectively isn't doing a good enough job, isn't setting up the team to compete. And as Ben has pointed out in the statement, they were talking about sustainability. I was just trying to find it again. Yeah. In order for us to keep progressing as a team and as a club as a whole, it's unconditional that we are aligned in our strategy. Effectively, they had a public disagreement. And depending on where they go next, definitely Scott Parker is it seems to me, is quite pleased to be out of there if he couldn't get the signings that he needed to compete. And hey, you know, we've seen a few 9-0s in the Premier League where people have been backed subsequently, managers have been backed. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys. It's not actually about the results.
I was going to ask Ben. It looks like they've already got someone else lined up. Mr. Sean Dyche is the front runner to replace him. I mean, it sounds like a good fit, no?
Depends what direction they're going in, because if they're going to make their next manager based upon how Scott Parker acted and dressed, then they've got to go for the 12-1 shot Thierry Henry and get somebody with style. And by the way, I've actually worn a Scott Parker jumper for this particular broadcast. I'm not sure if you can see on the camera.
In what way is it Scott Parker, Ben?
Well, because he was notorious, Kate, wasn't he, for that kind of like grey polo. And wait, this is the big reveal. Look.
Oh, I see.
It is kind of Scott Parker-like. Obviously, it's a budget
right
version of what I can afford versus Scott Parker. But I think Dyche would be a good fit in all seriousness, because we know that Bournemouth are going to have to firefight, and ultimately he is a manager that is used to working with boards that have shoestring budgets. So there's no time to move as far as this window is concerned. But in January, there might be a little bit more flexibility. And also, they need somebody that can galvanize a dressing room. And the good news is that you're not walking into a football club that's played, let's say, 20 odd games and is rock bottom of the table. They've won one and they've lost 3 matches that you'd expect them to lose, perhaps not by the aggregate score that they've been defeated, but 4-0 against Manchester City. They'll have bigger victories. 3-0 against Arsenal. They were sublime. And then Liverpool just had that backlash, didn't they, after losing to Manchester United at Old Trafford. So Dyche is, I agree, a good fit on paper. Chris Wilder is another name that is bound to be mentioned. I know that Michael Carrick is creeping into the conversation as well. And genuinely, Thierry Henry is there. I don't think he'd be interested in that role. He's a pundit with us at CBS. So why would he leave CBS to go and manage in the Premier League? He's got the best job in the world.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think it's a great fit, if I'm honest, for Thierry Henry. And then just to throw one more name out there, I think it's unlikely. I hope it doesn't happen, but naturally the conversation might turn. I don't know what you think, Kate, towards who might go next in the Premier League. And prior to departing, we all thought perhaps Brendan Rodgers could depart. And if the Bournemouth job is available, would he see that as the kind of move? Probably not, because
I don't think so.
Into a club where ultimately he wouldn't have any money either, much like at Leicester. But you never know. He might creep into the conversation.
Now, you know what? There's something that's been shown to us all today, is that Maxim Demin, who is the co-owner of Bournemouth, does not mess around. If he doesn't like what you've said, that's it. You know, he's really not on games at all. But further managers who could get sacked this season, Kate, I sent you a list earlier on. Steven Gerrard,
Marco Silva. I think he's doing
Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Marco Silva, Brendan Rodgers. Now, obviously, Steven Gerrard, the fans are, they're starting to make quite a lot of noise up there at Aston Villa. And me personally, I'm a big Steven Gerrard fan, and I believe he needs more time. I think people calling out for his name already is a bit unfair. When you see this sacking, it makes you think that anything can happen, right? Then you got Frank Lampard, who is always going to be a struggle. He just about got Everton out of the relegation spot last year. Marco Silva, the reason why he's on the list, Kate, is because Fulham, come on, they could be going down this season. Do you see what I mean? And if you look at Fulham historically, especially in the Premier League, they are not shy to pull the trigger finger when it comes to their manager. Of course, Brendan Rodgers, as Ben just said, he's in a situation right now where he probably feels let down. They've sold umpteen amount of players. Not a lot of players have come through, but he's still expected to obtain results. I don't know what your thoughts are, Kate.
Yeah, well, I think we'll leave Ben to do the Brendan Rodgers thing, because obviously he's a Leicester man through and through. But I think in terms of Aston Villa, that would be the one that I would have my eye on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, although, if you can manage to pull together some kind of the Lampard Gerrard derby, of course, it was Gerrard who beat Lampard in the end. But I don't know if this is how much of an achievement in the end that was against that Everton side. But let's focus on Aston Villa. I think the situation they've got there is that he is not able, it's inconsistent. Again, of course, we know we've only played 4 games this season, but even still, it's the wide variety of results that we're getting that makes you feel like there's not really a plan, there's not really a strategy. He's had a difficult time in terms of the number of changes he's had to make. So if you look at the centre-back pairings, I think it's he's had at least 4 different centre-back pairings, right, while he's been in the season, in the league games. And that is a really difficult situation. If you look at Tyrone Mings, he was considered to be 3rd choice, but then injuries have pushed him up again. Now he's injured. Anything like that where, sorry to bring in Tottenham, but we were planning to originally talk about Tottenham, just so you know. Guys. I was about to have a field day. But in terms of, if you look at some of the sides, even already at this stage in the season, they are settled. You know pretty much what side you're going to get, and each of these teams, because it's early in the season, these players need to know their jobs. And I'm not saying that Steven Gerrard doesn't have a plan, but it just feels like he's not been able to enforce it on his side, partly because of all these switches in personnel, and partly because they've been so inconsistent as individuals as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a message here from Stephen Howson, who is obviously with me on Vibe with Five. He says, Eddie Howe and Steven Gerrard were both appointed last November, yet apparently Gerrard needs more time to sort his team out. All right, mate. So, it looks like he doesn't have a
Waiting
lot
for
of
the
support on that
sideline.
side. Ben, I'm going to go over to you because I know we're limited for time. Thoughts on Brendan Rodgers when you're looking at his likelihood to be sacked from Leicester City? It's not like they've been saying it, but we're just guessing here, right? That it's a high possibility.
I don't necessarily think they'll sack Brendan Rodgers. The first thing to say is if they do so, they'll owe him a massive payoff. It's probably more likely that Brendan Rodgers would leave. So it's that merry-go-round, as Kate said. If Gerrard is under threat, does he go to a club like Villa? Bournemouth is a no because of the finances. Villa, perhaps. Everton, I don't think he'd have any problem walking in there if Lampard went, despite his Liverpool links. So Brendan Rodgers might look for an out and would almost have to say at some point to Leicester's board, I've taken the club as far as I possibly can. Leicester are in financial trouble. It's a byproduct almost of their success, because when you win the Premier League, you get to the quarterfinals of a Champions League, you almost make the Champions League for 2 years running, you qualify for the UEFA Europa Conference League. Even last season, they ended up finishing in the top half. All of that comes with bonuses because you're Leicester City. You're not a club like Manchester City or Liverpool. So everything Leicester do that is success, including 10th in the table or better, has bonuses. And therefore, a range of players are on high wages, and they've hit a point now, coupled with the spending that they've done on an excellent training facility, where they've got no financial leeway. And that's why, for example, a player like Kasper Schmeichel was allowed to go to Nice. He was getting on a bit anyway, but Leicester didn't really want him to go. But he was one of those names that was just on very big wages and they needed to get off the books. So Leicester haven't been able to sign anyone. They look defensively weak. Fofana's gone. There's clubs that could try and come in late for Maddison. I don't think they'll sanction that sale. Tielemans could go as well. And then suddenly Leicester are in a position where they're not scoring that many goals. They're conceding a lot of goals. The mood at the club has definitely turned. And when you add all of that up, Brendan Rodgers is a frustrated man, but he knows the situation. He understands that there's no leeway there. So I think it's more likely that he would walk rather than be sacked. And he would walk because another job becomes available. A sacking is not impossible, but Leicester don't really have the money, even with that Fofana fee, to pay him off. It wouldn't be worth it. But it's one to watch for sure. Leicester are a worry. They should have enough quality to stay up, especially because Bournemouth are going to struggle. That's one spot that's already gone. And there's a few other teams. Fulham, I know, have made it.
You really think they're relegation candidates?
I do, because think about it. Fulham have made quite a good start to the season. Leeds have had a very good start to the season. Everyone said that Wolves will struggle, but I think they'll do okay. Forest have signed 1 million players, so they can send half of them down to the Championship and keep half of them up in the Premier League and just field 2 teams, one called Nottingham and one called Forest. I think they'll probably finish below Leicester, though. And then it's just that third from bottom spot. And I've just got a really nagging feeling that Leicester won't go down, but with maybe 3 games to go, they still won't be mathematically safe. So I'm nervous.
What I'm going to do for you guys watching, I'll let you figure out who you think's going down, and obviously your thoughts specifically on Everton and Fulham, and also Kate. So does that mean that Eric Ten Hag is not going to be named as Eric 10 Games anymore? Like, I know there was that going on during Twitter. They're going to say that I'm a Man United hater, but I'm just asking really quickly before we wrap up.
No. I think with Eric Ten Hag, the point about him is that he made a stand. That's what we've seen. I thought in the first few games of the season, it looked like he was going to just roll with that tide of Manchester United. You know, people were saying it's too much of a step up. He can't come in and be like, I'm the boss of this club, because he's not the boss of this club. The boss of this club is Cristiano Ronaldo. Well, in the end, you know, he's made the stand. He dropped Ronaldo. He put him. You know, he left him on the bench. He left Maguire on the bench. He's made a stand. Now, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next 3 games. That's going to be interesting to see if the team continue to believe in him as the ultimate boss. But by taking that stand, I think that's a very significant moment in this season for Manchester United.
Guys, thank you very much for joining me, Ben, Kate. I look forward to having you guys on soon. Please make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and let us know who you think is going to get sacked next. Joel Beya, signing out. Peace. Guys, after watching this video and watching Vibe with Five, please make sure you check out Highs and Lows.
I had to go through this process to be able to identify people who go through these processes. And I find so much fulfillment now in encouraging players, helping them to understand also this, that their identity can't just be in football. I love football. Like I said, it's the world game, but it's always changing.
Also, make sure your notifications are on, because when there's new signings, we will be getting myself, Rio, Steve reacting to them. So please stay tuned.